Okay, I'll pull you like this all the way home.
See is you. All I have I bring to you, 'cause all I want is you. And nothing compares, nothing comes close to you. No one can know the depths of my soul. Nothing comes close to you. No one can know the depths of my soul like you. 'Cause all I want is you. All I see is you. Eyes on you, you hold all my affection. No one can know the depths of my soul like you. Nothing compares, nothing comes close to you. No one can know the depths of my soul like you.
When I lock eyes with you, I see my reflection. When I lock eyes with you, I feel your affection. I love to get lost in you, 'cause you're my obsession. When I lock eyes with you, and all I want is you. And all I need is you. And all I see is you, just you.
And when I lock
You can come in like a flood. I don't care what it looks like, 'cause I'm falling. I feel so hard, it's coming like a fire. Burn me up, burn me up. Let it go high. Love, I don't care, you can come in like a fire. Give you permission to come in like a fire. Take me over, take me over. Wanna be loved, wash us afraid. Wave us away. 'Cause I'm so in love, so in love. You can come alive, wash me over. Coming like a fire, coming like a
Search me, oh God, search my heart, and if you find any desire, it's not you, it's not you. Take it all away, take it all away, till all that's left is you. Turn the searchlight down from heaven. Search me, search me. I'm open, I'm open. Search me, search me. Search me, search me. You're the only one qualified. You're the only one qualified. 'Cause you made me, you made me. 'Cause you made me, you made me. You know what's supposed to be there. You know what's supposed to be there. So take it all away. Take it all away. Till all that's left is you. Take it all away. Take it all. Take it all. Take it all, till all that's left is you. Take it all away, take it all away, right now, right now. Till all that's left is you. Take it all away, oh yeah, oh yeah. Take it all away, oh yeah, oh yeah. Till all that's left is you. Take it all away, right now. Till take it all, take it all. Till all that's left is your love. You said, till all that's left is you. Those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, your promises we will be filled. Till all that's left is you. You give us the desires of our heart. You give us what to want. You give us what to crave. Till all that's purify my heart, created me a clean heart, created me a clean heart. Till all that's renew the right spirit, renew the right motives, renew the right pursuit, renew it, till all that's left is you. Oh, 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 oh. Lift your hands, there's a cleansing happening now. The divine surgeon, he's in the room. Oh. Even the things you don't know that are there, he's taking it out. But he's gentle, he's taking it out. With his fire, he's taking it out. With his love, his love, his love. He's a gentle surgeon. He won't hurt you. Oh, he's taking it out. Oh, yeah.
Take whatever you desire.
My heart is yours completely. My heart is yours totally. You love with no reservation. You're not looking for perfection. There's no need in me pretending. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. You deserve my full attention. Nothing less than my devotion. Oh, speak to me and I will listen. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. Lift it up. You can have my heart, yes you can. You can, you can.
The Lord of my emotion, set me free from selfish motives, and search me till there's nothing hidden, and I'll give you everything. Yes, I'll give you everything. Sing,
You can have my heart. You can. I belong to you. You can. You can. Every part. Sing it again. You can. It belongs to you anywhere. Yeah. You can. Oh yeah, oh yeah. My heart is yours forever. Yes, I did. My heart is yours forever. Yes, it is. My heart is yours. My heart, my mind, my soul. My heart is yours forever. My emotions are yours, yeah. My heart is yours forever. All my dreams are yours, yeah. My heart is yours forever. All of my plans are yours. My heart is yours forever. Yeah. all my heart, I belong to you. Nothing missing, I belong to you. Nothing hidden, I belong to you. Yeah, yes, I belong. I cry out, Abba, 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 I belong to you. I belong to you. Heart is yours, my heart is yours forever. Heart is yours. Heart is yours forever. Yes it is, yes it is. Even the parts I don't like, heart is yours. Even the parts I try to hide, my heart is yours. Every room belongs to you. My heart is yours. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. It all belongs to you. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. It all belongs to you. Oh yeah. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. Yeah. Come and consume every room. It all belongs. All belongs. With no competition, with no distractions. Yeah, you can. No competition, with no distractions. You can. No competition, no distractions. You can. Yeah. One by heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my yes, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my time, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my mind, you got it. You got it. Yeah, yeah. You got it. If you want my plans, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my dreams, you got it. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. Yeah. You got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. Yeah. got it, you got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it, yeah, you got it, yeah, you got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it, yeah, yeah, you got it, yeah, you got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it, you got it, yeah, you got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. Present your bodies, living sacrifices, holy and acceptable. It's our reasonable service. It's the least we can do. Give our hearts to you. It's the least we can do. Give our lives to you. One more time. Whoa. It belongs to you anyway.
Well, welcome back to our youth virtual campus. This is a high school Bible study. We're studying how do you know what you believe is really true, what you believe about Jesus and Christianity. It's called apologetics. It's the defense of the Christian faith. And today we're continuing on from what we started talking about last week of examining the claims of Jesus as God. Is he God? And frankly, we should start asking, before even examining whether or not what other people said about him is true, did he even claim to be God? Because if he didn't, if he never intended for us to think of him as divine, well, then what are we doing messing around with what other people are saying? He clearly knew himself, but he did. He did claim to be divine multiple times. So what do you do with that? Is there a lesser version of divinity, as the Mormons would have you believe? Is there a new category of how to understand this? Was Jesus wrong? And frankly, if he is claiming divinity, is he just crazy? Is he clinically insane? So we're going to talk about that again. This is Jesus on the witness stand, and I want to start with a question. Have you ever believed something? You believed something for which you were pretty sure other people thought you were crazy, right? Maybe it's your preference, like you think pineapple does not belong on pizza. At which point I'd think you're crazy because I've eaten pizza with pineapple on it and it's amazing, right? I happen to think that a little bit of Satan is still in snakes. Now, you might call me crazy. Maybe you agree with me. I don't know. Type it in the comments whether or not you think I'm crazy or not. But I still think, Satan could have chosen any animal to dwell in. When God sent him down to earth, right at the beginning of the creation of the world, and he's slithering, he could have entered any animal. And he entered a snake. And I don't know. There's nothing in the Bible to suggest this, but I happen to think there's still a little bit of Satan in every single snake. So whether or not you think I'm crazy, I don't know. But beyond even what you might believe about something and other people thinking you're crazy, what if people around you started claiming to be God, right? What if all of a sudden someone gets on their high horse and is like, you need to worship me, you need to bow down to me, you need to give your life for me? I mean, that's a level of serious claims, and what do you do with that? What do you do with that? So as we enter back into our courtroom drama, what I want to do is allow you to imagine the prosecution rising again to address the court. It is, Your Honor, if it is indeed the truth that Jesus of Nazareth actually believed himself to be the only begotten Son of this hypothetical God the Father, which we established last week, he did believe that, Is this not now surely the strongest evidence against Jesus? The fact that he actually believes he's the only begotten Son of this hypothetical God the Father. Is this not a sure sign of mental illness to the extreme? Whether it's megalomania or delusions of grandeur or complete disassociation from reality. Immediately the defense rises and says, Your Honor, the question is as to whether Jesus Christ was insane, either clinically or legally, is a valid one. Therefore, it should be answered in the same manner one would answer this question in any court of law and in any hospital. Did Jesus exhibit signs of mental illness associated with his identity claims? Right? Based on all we know of Jesus' behavior, can we consider Jesus insane? Because somebody who is delusional or dissociated from reality or a megalomaniac, we've heard people say, I am God before. Was Jesus in that category? Was he clinically insane? Did he suffer severe mental illness? We hold that the evidence will show that the answer to those questions is a resounding no. Now, I'm curious. Based on your common sense notions of mental illness, type this in the chat. What do you think you would consider to be a sign of mental illness? I mean, something that somebody does, what do you think is maybe an indicator that someone is struggling with severe mental illness? Go ahead and put those in the chat. Maybe for you, you would say they go to emotional extremes, right? They are manic in terms of their elation, their excitement, then they crash, like manic depressive. Maybe they just have totally illogical thinking all the time. They dwell in another fantasy world most of the time. And speaking of, they talk about beings who aren't there, people who are voices whispering into their ears. Maybe they go into just unpredictable fits. Maybe they just withdraw from human life completely, behaving like someone that they're not. I mean, we've at least seen portrayed, if not in real life, we've seen signs of mental illness. Okay? I don't know how many of you guys have seen the movie A Beautiful Mind. I love that movie. It's a wonderful movie in a look into the psyche of somebody who does wrestle with mental illness. And this is somebody who struggles with what's called paranoid schizophrenia. And this guy is constantly thinking. Essentially what happens is something will trigger him and he'll enter into this new mindset where he is this paranoid puzzle solver for a Secret Service agency. And he always is constantly thinking the government is coming to get him, and he's a genius. He's really, really, really smart. And there are times when he's totally lucid and he's not in this paranoid schizophrenic state, but then there's other times when he thinks he's totally somebody else. And that the government's out to get him. And the question I want to ask is, do the Gospels, or frankly any other historical account, suggest that Jesus suffered from severe mental illness? Because then that would be a reason to doubt his claims of deity, to say, oh, that puts you into a crazy category. Because the reality is Jesus spoke very eloquently, very forcibly, and with clarity of thought. Jesus' emotions were healthy, even stable. He could function in society and had rational things to say about it. He spoke to God in prayer, and sometimes God answered back and everyone could hear it. Like when Jesus was baptized, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased, hear him," right? Jesus says, "Glorify your name, Father," and then he responds, "I have both glorified it and I will glorify it," and all of his disciples heard it. And so Jesus was not suffering from some delusional reality. See, the difference between a delusional person and a person who has a firm grasp on reality is that the person with a firm grasp on reality can actually back up their claims with real evidence and support. For Jesus, that evidence was the miracles performed. That evidence was the miracles performed. But here's the thing, a lot of people thought so many different things about him. And you just take, for example, John chapter 10. John chapter 10, this is verse 19 and 20. There was a division among the Jews because of Jesus' words. Many of them said, he has a demon and he's insane. Why should we listen to him? But others said, these aren't the words of one who's oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? So Jesus says, no, I'm not crazy. Look at actually what's happening. When I say something, it actually reflects reality. Remember one of the first weeks, you guys were confused at why I was talking about why this matters so much. Truth is being in alignment with reality. This matters. So that when somebody says something significant, and it might even sound crazy, if it aligns with reality, then what they're saying is actually true. They have a firm grasp on reality. They have clarity of thought. John chapter 14, verse 11. Jesus says, believe me that I'm in the Father and the Father is in me. Now those are grand claims. But he goes on to say, or else if that's not enough for you, believe on the account of the works themselves. For Jesus, his arguments were cohesive and rational, and he says, I'm going to point to real life things that back up what I'm saying. So at this point in our courtroom drama, the prosecution once again arises to present their exhibit A. It is the fact that Jesus did not fit the God profile. In fact, he didn't even claim it. Prosecution says, even if Jesus appears to be this model citizen of mental stability, he is still just a man and not God. In fact, Jesus was not omnipotent, meaning all-powerful. Jesus was not omniscient, meaning he knows everything. Jesus was not eternal. In fact, this is shown by the Gospels themselves. They don't bear divinity upon Jesus. Consider the following passages, speaking to the notion that Jesus is not omnipotent. Jesus is not all-powerful. Consider Mark 7:24. From there, Jesus arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. He entered a house and wanted no one to know it, but he could not be hidden. Jesus is not capable of performing what he wanted to do. He doesn't have enough power to do that. Mark 7:24. Matthew 13:58. Now, Jesus did not do mighty works there because of their unbelief. The belief limited the power of Jesus. That's the claim here. Consider the Bible in the New Testament claims that Jesus is not all good. I mean, if he's God, he must be all good. Mark 10:17. Now, as Jesus was going out on the road, someone came running to him, knelt before him, and asked him, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" So Jesus himself says, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, and that is God." Jesus clearly making a distinction between himself and the one who is good. Is Jesus claiming to be not all good? Here's another one. Jesus is not omniscient. He's not all-knowing. Consider Mark 13:32. Jesus says, "But of that hour and day no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, nor the Father." John 14:28. Jesus says, "If you love me, you'd rejoice, because I said I'm going to the Father, and my Father's greater than I." Consider that the New Testament claims Jesus is not eternal, but he's actually created. Colossians 1:15. Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. At this point, the prosecution rests, and after they're finished presenting to the court, and these passages are discussed, the judge allows the defense to enter into evidence its own selection of verses. But first, it wants to refute the claims made previously by the prosecution. So the defense arises and says, "Your Honor, with all due respect, these verses are actually taken out of context and do not actually deny the divinity of Jesus Christ. Even though there are those who have historically taught that, they are wrong. Here is some commentary for each passage for discussion. In Mark 7:24. Now remember, Mark 7:24, Jesus says, Jesus went into the region of Tyre and Sidon. He wanted no one to know it, but he could not be hidden. He didn't have the capability. Jesus' power here is not in question, but rather the ability of others to hide him. It's through the people's inability to hide Jesus that Jesus is able to work an even greater miracle. At this point, he goes on to heal the Canaanite woman and her daughter, the Canaanite woman's daughter, later on in that passage. Consider Matthew 13, where Jesus, it says, "Now he did not do many mighty works because of their unbelief." Here we actually have a self-limiting of his own power. Jesus self-limiting his own power. Not that he didn't have the power, but he self-limits because the people do not believe his works. He did not do many mighty works. It doesn't say he could not do, but that he would not do those works because of their unbelief. Consider Mark chapter 10, verse 17, when Jesus says, "Why do you call me good? There's no one good but God." Jesus is not denying that he's God here. Rather, he's asking the person if he really knows what he's saying when he says that Jesus is the good teacher. Is he just sucking up to Jesus, wanting to get some favors out of this famous prophet? Or does he really believe that Jesus is all-knowing and that Jesus is good? This is how Jesus is testing this man's faith. He's not denying divinity. In Mark chapter 13, which says, when Jesus says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels, nor the Son, but only the Father." He's talking about Jesus, his physical return to planet Earth, the second coming of Christ. Here we see Jesus himself humbling himself in his humanity. This is the part of the mystery of the incarnation, that God emptied himself and became human. In fact, it's one of the distinctives of Christianity and one of the glorified distinctives of Christianity. This emptying of Jesus involves the self-limiting of his power for the sake of his mission. If you consider this, if Jesus uses all of his power, he runs the risk of limiting human freedom in response to him. He cares more about that and a relationship with those responding to him than his own power. If Jesus let himself tell when the end of the world would be, it would frankly take the motivation out of you and me to stay vigilant and watchful and faithful. In addition, the very nature of the end times, it kind of defies human reason. I don't know if you've ever read Revelation, but when someone says, "I looked and I saw his voice," like the voice of rushing waters, like that doesn't really make sense. How do you describe something that's undescribable? And so this may not have even been explainable in human terms. So in this capacity, Jesus self-limits himself. Consider Colossians 1. If we read the complete text, we actually find that the firstborn of all creation does not mean that Jesus is created, but in fact the creator. Because earlier on it goes on to say, he's the image of the invisible God. Over things that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. He's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation, over things that are on earth or under the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, for by him all things were created. Consider this. This is exactly what the passage is saying. Jesus is the creator. He's not the created one. For by Jesus all things were created in heaven and on earth. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. I think I read that slightly wrong, but you get the point. Jesus is the creator. So the defense continues on to their rebuttal. There are also many passages that clearly point to Jesus as divine in origin, sharing all of the powers of God without having to take them out of context. Here are some in response to each of those points that were made. Whether or not Jesus is omniscient, all-knowing, consider this. John chapter 16, Jesus said, when his disciples said to Jesus, "See, now you're speaking plainly, using no figure of speech. Now we are sure that you know all things, and you have no need that anyone should question you. By this, we believe that you came forth from God." And Jesus goes on to affirm that statement. John chapter 13, verses 1 through 4. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus already knew that his hour had come and that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were already in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil, having already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he had come from God and was going to God, he rose from supper, laid aside his garments, and took a towel and girded himself. And later on goes on to identify Judas as the traitor. Consider the claim that Jesus is not omnipresent. He's not everywhere. Matthew 28, verse 20. Jesus himself says, "Lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age." Matthew 18:20. "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name together, there I am in their midst." Whether or not Jesus is all-powerful, is he omnipotent? Matthew 28:18. Jesus says, "All authority, all power," right, "has been given to me in heaven and on earth." And Mark chapter 2, verses 6 to 12. Some of the scribes were sitting there and reasoning in their heart, "Why does this man speak blasphemies like this? Who can forgive God? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" But immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they were reasoning within themselves thus, he said to them, "Why do you reason about these things in your heart? Which is easier to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Arise, take your bed and walk'? But just so that you will know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins," he said to the paralytic, "I say to you, arise, take your bed, and go to your house." Immediately he arose, took his bed, and went out in the presence of them all. He is all-powerful. Whether or not Jesus is eternal, uncreated, he's always existed. John chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. "In the beginning was the Word," it's referring to Jesus, "and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God." Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Jesus claimed divinity, and he backed it up. What will you do about that? Because if Jesus says he's God, and the New Testament is reliable enough to verify a claim like that, Jesus says he's God, and then he goes on to produce so much good and to do so many amazing works, like healing people of their blindness and their paralysis, and restoring kids back to their parents, and healing families, restoring bodies, raising the dead, saying things like, "Love your enemies." And Jesus leaves this world a much better place than when he found it. At the very least, awesome guy. And he makes claims like these. He's either right or he's wrong. He can't be wrong and still a good guy. If he's wrong, he's totally evil, desperately evil and wicked, to influence the thousands and the hundreds at the very least who were around him immediately, and the thousands that would follow him shortly after, and the millions who have since, to intentionally, knowing he is not correct with his claims to divinity, he's incredibly evil to say, "I'm God and you should lay down your life for me. You should take up your cross and follow me." That is murderously evil. Or he's clinically insane. He was wrong, but he didn't know it. But claims like that are grand, especially when you make them as often as Jesus did. So either Jesus is wrong and he knew it, making him evil, or he's wrong and he didn't know it, making him absolutely crazy, clinically insane. But you can't say that. You can't say that because he backed up those claims. Look at all the miracles that he did. So if those two aren't correct, the only other option is that Jesus wasn't wrong, that he was right. So I pose the question to you again, what will you do with that? If Jesus is Lord, you must bow. This is where apologetics becomes sticky, where people don't want to hear you anymore. Because it's not that it doesn't line up with reality. It's not that it's historically incoherent. It's not that this is unverifiable on a archaeological standpoint or a scientific standpoint. It's that I don't want to give authority over my life to anybody else. I want to be autonomous. I want to be God. And if Jesus is standing in that place, that means I don't get to. I have to bow. And I don't like that. And because I don't like that, I choose not to believe and find facts to back up what I want to believe. That's not how being an intellectual works. Which is why I said at the very beginning of the study, if you are an atheist, you are so for other than intellectual reasons. But if Jesus is Lord, that means we are not. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that?